At the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, worker co-ops showed that it's possible to run a successful business while prioritizing the safety of workers.
Senior reporter at The Real News, Jaisal Noor, spoke with workers and owners at 8 co-ops across 4 states about the business model and how they were able to make it work. Jaisal joins us now to discuss. Welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me.
Now, can you just start off by telling us just about this report? Walk us through what you found as you started digging into the co-op business model.
Yeah, I've been following worker co-ops, especially in places like Baltimore, where I'm based, and around the country for a couple years now. And it's really fascinating to see what can happen when workers, are the owners, and that's how worker co-ops operate. Workers are the owners; they run the business democratically, and so I wanted to sort of compare how they operated during the pandemic versus how Amazon operated when you had thousands of people getting sick in warehouses. You had efforts to unionize that were being crushed down in Bessemer, Alabama. So I thought that would be really fascinating. How do businesses where the workers vote democratically choose profits versus safety? And worker co-ops show that it's possible to run a successful business, weather the pandemic, and in a lot of cases still be profitable and not have to compromise their core values and still provide often essential services. I spoke to home care workers. I spoke to food cooperatives, businesses that were on the front line of the pandemic, and they managed to make their workers' jobs not hell during this awful time.
How did they compare to small businesses? Because there's nobody more lionized in American politics than small business owners. But if you've ever actually worked for a small business owner, often you find them to be little tiny tyrants. A monopoly is made up not just on size, but on competition. And so some of these small businesses, have absolutely no competition. They're, say, the only store in a small town. And if there's not a cooperative model there, they can kind of do whatever they want to their employees because they have so much hiring power. Did you compare them to comparatively sized businesses as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the most interesting things to come out of what I learned through this reporting is because so there's a lot of restaurants, there's a lot of businesses. So the average co-op has about 10 workers. So that is the size of a small business. And and like you said, small business owners are lionized, and and so when you saw the headlines of people owners not being able to find work, that sort of kind of really struck me. But instead of a business owner, even a small business owner, taking the majority share of the profit, in a co-op, the profit is split often equally, and oftentimes even the non-owners get a share of the profit too. When the decisions are made democratically, you have to work together. It gives a sense of ownership to the workers, and you're not just a cog in a machine. You're not working a 9 to 5. Oftentimes, you're working until the job is done. Is how the workers put it. So it sort of flips the script on what we traditionally think about. So a lot of times, there's a lot of education that goes into running a worker co-op, but the workers say that having a sense of ownership when you have one of the biggest wealth divides in this country's history makes their product better. And that's how, even if their costs are a little higher, they're able to compete with other businesses and often larger businesses because people want to support this model. And they know that at the end of the day, even at a laundry service, one of the biggest co-ops in the country, their product is so much better and they have competitive prices that the customers want to go and shop with them.
Well, and let me keep picking on that point because I'm curious as to how you found pay compared. That was one of the most interesting things. Brookings released a fairly disturbing study, I think last November, about how some of these major corporations were compensating workers, frontline workers who actually were taking risks over the course of the pandemic, or how they weren't compensating them. Some corporations were doing really well on that point, others were not. And it's interesting also because the Bessemer workers were not actually complaining very much about their pay. They're at that $15 an hour level. So how have you found that co-ops compared over the course of the pandemic with some of these major corporations or comparative businesses?
So yes, there's as you mentioned, there's research that shows that in frontline sectors, which are traditionally very exploitative, and in terms of pay, but also benefits, and also being able to control your working conditions, right? In Amazon, you saw Amazon wanted to roll out like a therapy booth where you can go and sort of talk through what issues you're having. In a worker co-op, you get to meet with the other co-owners, and you get to vote and decide. You get to debate what the problem is and how to work through it, which can often be challenging. But at the end of the day, you get to help make that shot, make that call, which is what workers really want. They don't have to go to a therapy booth. They want to be able to control their working conditions, which is a main thing in Amazon. And so, studies have shown the pay is better, you have better benefits, and along with the working conditions, that is ultimately for frontline workers, they're putting their life on the line. So that is really what they deserve.
And you mentioned scheduling in there, and to me, I think scheduling is the thing where there's the biggest gap in its importance and its frustration to workers, and the level of discourse around it in the national conversation. Like, you never hear people talking about scheduling, but at retail jobs, fast food jobs, basically any shift work, you're going to often have the manager giving the schedule out for the weekend, say at like midnight on Thursday. And you just have no choice then. This is your schedule, you have to be in. Doesn't matter if this conflicts with your social obligations, your dating life, your childcare, your other job or two that you have. This is the schedule, you got to be in here now. Did you find that was different in a co-op?
Yeah, one of the workers said it best. They said that they got to design their job. They got to make it work for them, so it doesn't feel like they're going to a job. And so, absolutely, schedules. Schedules are a huge thing, and when you're not being told when to work and when you can work together to figure out how you can get your job done efficiently. And like I said, oftentimes you are working more because you don't get to go home until everyone is done. So if you're finished your work, you're going to go to the other section and go help finish them, help finish packing or whatever. But at the end of the day, even if you are working more, if you have to take time off, people understand. That's one of the studies that I found showed that for during the pandemic, when you didn't have daycare, co-ops allowed parents to split their shifts or work from home, or they could find ways to help get their employees what they need. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the workers. Profits are important too. It is a business, so they are seeking profits, but they're never going to put profits over the workers. And so fundamentally, it's still a small sector and it's a growing sector. But I think this with the necessary support, if co-ops can get some support, they could really be a big player in the U.S. economy.
Really interesting stuff. Jaisal Noor, thank you so much for your time today. We'll have more Rising for you next.